Welcome back to CW Iowa Live, and it is time for Rekha's voice, Rekha Basu from the Des Moines Register, joining us in studio as she does each and every week. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. We were just chatting before the cameras turned on about the conventions that took place last week and the one that we're in the middle of right now, and asking about your viewing habits and whether or not you watched any of last week.
You know, it's funny. I cannot tear myself away from these conventions, and I've heard people admit sort of, apologetically that they've been watching the conventions because they have nothing else to do. I can't do anything else when the conventions are on. They are
No, it's
really,
on all the major networks.
So interesting. On all the major networks, exactly. I mean, the major ones actually don't start until later in the evening when the big names are coming on. But CNN, MSNBC do have them earlier on. So
you even watch the pregame?
Oh yeah, I watch the pregame. I watch everything.
So you're a convention junkie, is what you're saying?
I kind of am. I mean, I'm just really curious about what's going to come out of people's mouths and how they're framing themselves.
Okay, as a journalist, then,
yes.
The overall feel of the convention last week to the feel of the convention this week. What are your observations?
Okay, the biggest difference I would say is that last week's convention was all about one man. It was about Donald Trump, and the focus was all on Trump. And in this case, I think the focus has been more on the party ideals and on other people getting attention and not just speaking about Trump. For example, these women who spoke yesterday at the Democratic convention, whose sons had been killed in police violence, they were so touching. And yes, of course, they referenced Hillary Clinton, but they were also bringing up and highlighting issues of police brutality. There's just, I think, it's a very broad base of people who have been speaking. And of course, the tension around Bernie Sanders supporters versus Hillary supporters and trying to bring the two sides together. And Sarah Silverman, the statements that she gave on the opening night, telling Bernie Sanders that even though she was a Bernie supporter herself, you're being ridiculous, you've got to stop and come together. So, I mean, it did show that there was a place for both camps to be represented. It was not at all like the Ted Cruz kind of coming in and trying to steal the thunder and refusing to endorse, where Ted Cruz's candidacy was really hardly even acknowledged.
What did you think? What did you think of the moment? Did you see the moment where Bernie's brother was shown?
Yes.
Now, what did you think of that moment? Because there was
so
tears, a lot of tears and a lot of eyes.
It was very, very touching. Now, he lives abroad apparently, because this was Americans abroad, Democrats abroad, and I don't know where he lives, but I did meet him. He came to Des Moines.
You did?
I did, yeah. He came to Des Moines while there was this film festival, and it was a festival about minority groups and participations, and I was moderating one of the panels. It was held at the Des Moines Arts Center, and then afterwards there was a gathering at Styx, and he was there, so I was introduced to him. Lovely person. So I don't remember, does he live in Mexico or Canada? It's not, I don't think it's very far away.
Okay, and then what about the moment when Bernie said, you know what, let's take my votes and let's get behind one person?
Well, it was very important. Now, I don't know if it was soothing enough to his supporters to actually chill the sentiments, which were still, I think emotions were still very high, and quite frankly, understandably so, because they were done, Bernie and his campaign and his supporters were done a real disservice. And that's what my column is about today. So, the big headline coming out of this release by WikiLeaks of some 20,000 DNC emails has been who hacked and why were they obtained and why were they released. And the big theory is that the Russians were behind it, the Russian government, Putin was behind it, on behalf of Donald Trump, which sort of blows your mind to even conceive of that as a possibility, that the Russian government is meddling with an American election on behalf of Donald Trump, of all people. But, and that is granted a very big story. But to me, an equally big story is what was in those emails and what it reflected about what was going on internally within the DNC, in that they were trying to throw the election to Hillary Clinton and trying to edge Bernie Sanders out of the way. And I think that plays right into the narrative that Bernie Sanders was expounding on during his campaign, which was that the whole system is rigged, power perpetuates itself, and it's rigged to keep people in power because they're backed by money, and then money is backed by big names and in politics and vice versa. And, here it was coming true. It was playing itself out in these emails.
Now, have you seen any of the emails at all? Have you had a chance to access any of them?
I haven't seen them directly, but I've read what was in them in various, newspaper reports of them. And there were things like, in one case, a DNC official is talking about how to use Bernie Sanders' religion against him. And he says, somebody should ask him. This was before a Southern primary. There were a couple of Southern primaries coming up, and they were going to be talking to Southern Baptists. Somebody should ask him what's his religion, because I've heard him say he's atheist, but then I've also heard him say he's Jewish, and there's a big difference for my peeps, I guess he's Southern himself, between those two things. I don't know what the implication was. Is it better to be Jewish, or is it better to be an atheist, or worse, is what they were looking at, because they were trying to undermine him. And the thing is, the reason why this all, I think, hurts so much, especially for supporters in Iowa who were here, supporters of Bernie Sanders who were here, and even Martin O'Malley in the primary campaign, was that they were saying, why are these Democratic debates being so limited? They were limited to only 6 debates. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the outgoing DNC chair, had decreed that they could only be 6 debates, and that meant that states like Iowa couldn't decide we wanted more. We wanted our own debates. And even when there was something like the Brown and Black Presidential Forum,
I remember that,
they were not allowed to be on the stage at the same time. They had to be there sequentially, so they weren't debating each other. Now that obviously helps the prospects of the person who's better known, who's a bigger name, who's been on TV more, and that would be Hillary Clinton. And then airing them at the same time as a big football game on a Saturday night when they had 11 million fewer viewers than the Republican debate had.
The whole programming of when these debates were going to be on the air was questionable in the first place.
Was very questionable. Yeah. And then they tried to bar Bernie Clinton's access to documents about where his supporters were, because they said someone from his campaign had stolen stuff from Hillary's. But they were playing favorites. They were clearly playing favorites.
And it was from the top down. It was
from the top down. That's the thing. If it was a couple of rogue officials,
because that happens everywhere. It happens in the workplace. We know that when emails go around, when you say things you shouldn't be saying, it's going to come back and bite you. You know that.
Of course.
But this was coming from the people in charge. This was coming
from the top. There was one email in which Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chair, said, "Oh, he's never going to be president." You don't say that when it's supposed to be an open primary and when everybody is supposed to have an equal chance and when the party is not supposed to be playing favorites. And as I sort of prefaced my remarks in the column today, I am as terrified as anyone about the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency. I think it would set this country back centuries. Partly because of his autocratic style of leadership, But let's be honest here, and let's not try to just frame our remarks and our observations to support the nominee of the party, which, of course, Hillary Clinton is the nominee. Mm-hmm. She's got it fair and square, supposedly. But what went into building her up as a candidate was not fair. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, and I think Bernie Sanders supporters would really appreciate some kind of an accounting, explanation, apology, and that it's not enough for Debbie Wasserman Schultz to leave. I mean, she's now left as chair, but she's still turning up at the convention. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's still turning up, and she's still honorary chair for all 50 states for Hillary Clinton's campaign. And
so she's still going to be involved.
She's still going to be very involved for Hillary Clinton. And, that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. She should go quietly. She should go. And other people should go, too. The other people who are behind some of these emails should also go. They should clean house there. And then they should open up the rules. And they should make sure that they're more of a grassroots organization that's more broadly representative of all people.
But do you think it would have made a difference? Do you think it would have made a difference if the people up on the top tier of what we're talking about, the email-wise, if they didn't say those things about Bernie, do you think the results would have been different?
I think that the results might have been different if the debate format were different, if Bernie got more of a hearing. I mean, look, nobody expected Bernie to go anywhere, least of all me, when he first came in.
He did really well.
But
you have to give him credit.
He won 20 states outright, And so if he had been given more of a hearing, more exposure, who knows what would have happened. He was also blocked by what I think is a very undemocratic part of the DNC, which is this super delegate system where some delegates have a bigger vote than others because of their stature within the party. So that really did him in. I think if the Democratic Party didn't have super delegates, he would have had a real fighting chance at it. So,
do you think it would have been a better contest with Bernie going up against Donald Trump as opposed to Hillary going up against Donald Trump?
A lot of polls have actually indicated that it would be. Now, I don't know now. This was some time ago when he was still in the race. But, Trump speaks of Bernie admiringly. They were both outsiders, or at least, framing themselves as
but Trump also spoke about Hillary admiringly, too, a couple of years ago.
True, a couple of years ago before he was running. But now he's speaking admiringly of Bernie even when he was in the race, because he says we are both political outsiders and we both believe that the system is rigged and I mean, that's the appeal that both of them tried to frame for their constituents. And, obviously in different ways. Bernie is a socialist, Trump is a total capitalist, or a democratic socialist, I should say. So he believes in really, spreading the wealth around, whereas Trump is all every man for himself. But it's really fascinating to see what has happened behind the scenes. And it's a reminder that, it's great to talk up the wonders of democracy and the fact that we now have our first female presidential nominee, which is huge, which is absolutely a huge thing. I will not disparage that one tiny bit. But process matters. The parties that give you these candidates, that anoint these candidates, they need to be fair and above board. And
transparency is what you're saying.
Transparency is huge, and also even-handedness, not trying to favor one candidate over another. And I know that Trump had grievances that the Republican Party was doing the same thing.
He was going up against everything.
Him.
Yeah,
right.
He was going the opposite way. He was trying to swim upstream.
Exactly. So that's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah.
But then the other point is honesty and the power of apology. So I had a column last week saying that after Melania Trump's speech, which was essentially plagiarized from Michelle Obama's speech to the 2012 convention, there was no acknowledgement by the Trump campaign or the party that any of it had come from Michelle Obama's
words. It was flat
words.
denial. What do you mean not acknowledged? It was flat denial.
Exactly. And, absolutely no sense of responsibility for it, and actually calling names to the people who are making these out, like, oh, Clinton is behind it, and Clinton should be this and that and punished. And it turns out that, as the New York Times sort of dissected the whole process of how the speech got written, of how Melania's speech got written, she discovered that, yes, indeed, there was some sort of ghostwriter who had worked for the Trump organization who had taken words of Michelle Obama's that Melania Trump admired, written them down, written a speech, it got incorporated into there. So finally, this comes out. Well, they should have been bending over backwards then, the campaign and the party, to apologize for having maligned Hillary Clinton in the process, and even apologize to Michelle Obama for plagiarizing her. But they couldn't bring themselves to apologize. Why is it so hard to acknowledge a wrongdoing and say, I'm sorry? It's so important,
It's not like it was going to derail the whole campaign. It was to say, you know what, you're right.
This happened.
It happened.
It
and
happened,
let's move on
and we're
from there.
sorry that we were blaming the messenger.
So then what you want from the DNC, the upper levels of DNC, is like, you know what, we were favoring, sorry, we're going to take measures and not let that happen again.
Major measures, both structural measures within the party system, like get rid of superdelegates. I wish they would do that, but there's no talk about doing that. And also just clean up, the staff there. Just purge it and begin anew. And we're sorry, but they can't seem to bring themselves to do that. And so this hurt is going to linger for supporters of other candidates until they do.
All right, so we'll find out more details in the paper today. It is on what page of the hymnal?
It is on page 17A.
17A. So grab the register. In case you want, it's in the first section. You take the back page, peel it back, and then you see Rekha. See her smiling face right there. Good job, young lady. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
We will be right back, folks. We'll try to sneak in a couple of totally serious news stories to kind of lighten the mood, including a new candidate running for president. Have you heard about this, Rekha? There's a third person running. We'll tell you who it is next.